Hi everyone, and welcome back to Open Your Eyes to the Universe. I'm Gabrielle Martin, and it's a pleasure to have you with us again for another episode. If you're joining us, open-eyed meditations and interviews with people who inspire and uplift others by sharing their wisdom, their insights, and their experiences. We began 2021 in conversation with Bishop Philip Huggins, the President of the National Council of Churches here in Australia, and he was joined by Charlie Hogg, the Director of the Brahma Kumaris, also in Australia. And they were exploring endings and beginnings and shared their invocations for 2021. Tonight we're in the company of Dr. Sarah Eagger, and our topic this evening is self-compassion. We're probably all familiar with the meaning of compassion, something along the lines of recognizing the suffering of others and then taking action to help. Compassion embodies a tangible expression of love for those who are suffering. So then what does self-compassion really mean? Dr. Sarah Eagger is chair of the Janki Foundation, and she's a retired consultant psychiatrist, formerly at the Imperial College in London. She's on the executive committees of both the Religion, Spirituality and Psychiatry section of the WPA and the Special Interest Group on Spirituality at the Royal College of Psychiatrists, also in the UK. Interestingly, Sarah is born in Australia and raised, but has spent most of her adult life in London, and that's where she's currently based. As a practitioner of Raj Yoga meditation for over 40 years and a certified mindful self-compassion teacher, Sarah is an advocate of a values-based approach to healthcare. Now that's one that embraces peace, love, positivity and compassion for the benefit of oneself and others. And I know Sarah as a deeply compassionate person with a refined intellect and a very deep love for humanity. And she's got a great sense of adventure as well. And she's well placed to lead a conversation with us tonight on self-compassion. She maintains that self-compassion is the very opposite of self-criticism. It's an inner strength that enables us to acknowledge our shortcomings, learn from them, and make the necessary changes with an attitude of kindness and respect. Sarah will explore the links between our body, our mind and soul, and how by using our deepest innate spiritual qualities, we can meet our own pain and suffering with patience, kindness, and care. And isn't that refreshing from blaming others? She's going to focus on what is compassion and how does that relate to having compassion for ourselves, the components of self-compassion, and how it works with our emotional regulatory system. And she's got some simple practices to give ourselves compassion. So viewers, as always, we welcome your questions, and thanks to those of you who've already sent them in. We've got them with us here. And if you'd like to write us a question during her talk, please do so. You can use the chat box and we'll receive it that way. And we'll ask those questions to Sarah during the Q&A. Well, Sarah, it's been a few years since you've been in Australia, and it's lovely to have you back with us online. So welcome back to Down Under.
Thanks so much, Gabrielle. It's lovely to be joining you all, obviously a few hours behind you, but it's lovely to feel that I'm in Australia, at least virtually. And you'll notice that I still have my Australian accent, so I'm still partly based with you there in Australia. We thought we would start this evening with just a short meditation, just to really get us in the right mood, if you like, in the right position, just for taking in this information, really setting aside everything you've been doing. So I'd just like to lead you into a little meditation to start. So I'd invite you just to find a comfortable place to sit. Taking a few deep breaths. And have your eyes half open or just unfocused or closed, whatever feels comfortable for you. Maybe just start by noticing what are the sounds in your environment. Just bringing yourself into the present moment. Maybe you're hearing the wind or the sea or bird song or traffic or other noises going on in your house, people moving around. What are you noticing? And I'd invite you to come a little closer in and just scanning your body with your mind, noticing where you might have any tension, dropping your shoulders, relaxing your legs and your hands and your arms. Just letting go of any tension in your body. Then coming in a little closer, noticing your breath. Just focusing on that gentle rhythm of breathing in and breathing out. And how your breath can be a real anchor. It can be very soothing. A bit like the waves of the ocean, just breathing in and breathing out. And then coming in closer still, just surveying your inner landscape of your thoughts and feelings. You may have had a busy day, lots of things going on, but a bit like watching a river flowing past, just stepping back and not really attaching yourself to any one particular thought. Just putting them aside, bringing yourself into this present moment. And again, noticing how you're feeling. Am I a bit tired? Am I feeling good, relaxed? Again, just noticing my inner landscape. Not judging it or getting caught up in it, just observing. And then coming in closer still as I step back, just feeling very quiet, very still inside. Allowing my thoughts to slow down and dropping deeper and deeper to a feeling of peace, a sense of stillness that lies at my center. underneath all those busy thoughts and feelings going up and down, there's the bedrock of stillness, of peace. And gradually connecting again with my breath and my body, and coming back to the world around me. So I hope you found that a nice introduction to just settling in for this evening's talk. So I'm going to share some slides with you. So I'm going to start with that. And when we talk about the art and science of self-compassion, it's quite helpful, as Gabrielle did, to start to think about compassion first. So I'd just like you to reflect for a minute, what does compassion mean to you? What does compassion mean to me? Just have a little think. It's a very it's a topic that's mentioned a lot these days, isn't it? It's the feeling that the world needs more compassion, that people in the world need more compassion. There's lots, the whole COVID situation has made us much more aware of each other and each other's pain and possibly isolation and fear, all these feelings that have been going around the globe. And how should we respond to those? So it's interesting to think about that this word compassion, when you break it down from the Latin, is com, with, and passion in this sense is to suffer. So it is to suffer with. But I think if we go down deeper, and these are some nice kind of quotes to help us think about what compassion is. Are we really suffering with the other person? That's something to think about. And a nice quote from the Dalai Lama, it's just this wish that all living beings should be free from suffering. And we know that suffering is part of life, that we all have our ups and downs and our challenges. But somehow it's this feeling, oh, I wish you weren't feeling like that, or that you weren't going through this situation. And Paul Gilbert, who's a very well-known psychologist in the UK, who's done a lot of work on compassion and self-compassion, describes it as the deep awareness of the suffering of oneself and other beings, but coupled with this wish to, an effort to alleviate it. So there's a sense here now of there being an energy behind compassion. So it's not just empathy, it's not just sympathy, there's an active component where I want to do something about it. But it's nice that he also mentions not just other people, but also oneself. And the founder of the founding president of the Janki Foundation, Daddy Janki, to her compassion was not wanting sorrow to remain in another, but having the strength in the self to remove that sorrow. I think we all know what that's like, isn't it? It's like when we're feeling upset or down or something's bothered us, and we have a talk with a good friend or some wise person or someone supportive, and just by sharing and being in their presence, somehow you come away and you feel lighter, and somehow your burden's been lifted. And that's been the energy, the power of the positivity or the wisdom of that other person has helped me to let go of my own suffering. So really, how do we get that strength in ourselves as well to be able to help others? And this is particularly relevant for all of us working in the healthcare professions. or any caregiving role. A lovely saying from Myanmar, when the sunshine of loving kindness, so again, that energy of love and kindness, meets the tears of suffering, the rainbow of compassion arises. So it's understanding that really compassion is in the context of suffering. So if you're feeling fine, you're feeling happy, nothing bad is happening to you or people around you, you're not really going to need compassion in those situations. But when we meet suffering, when we meet the challenges of life, when things go up and down, illness, misfortune, things like that, then that's when this feeling of compassion can arise. And it's interesting to look at what are the components of compassion. So, and we'll refer to this a little later on when we start thinking about self-compassion as well. But it begins by attending, by noticing, as we just did then a little bit, noticing what's going on in the other person. So to really, for that feeling of compassion to arise, I have to begin by noticing that someone else is suffering, there's something going on. Understanding, so trying to see what's causing the distress of someone else. So this sense of appraising the situation. Empathizing. So empathy is this kind of resonance that we have with other people. It's a felt response to their own pain. You know, when you're moved to tears, in a sense, that's empathy. And we need some empathy, maybe not too much, because if we're just empathizing, we're not going to be much help because we'll be in the same situation as someone else. But we need to touch to a certain extent a little bit what they're feeling so that we have that sense of really understanding what it's like for them. And then helping. So this call to action. So compassion is an energy that's moving and it's wanting to alleviate the pain. So there's a practical side to it, which may not be, we're not talking about rescuing. I think that's important to be aware of. Sometimes a compassionate listener means just sitting with the person, just being in their presence, being able to bear their story, bear their pain, bear witness, and your own energy, your own open heart, your own love, and hearing their story is what is the action. And when we look in the thesaurus, you know, all these words come up for compassion. So it's things like sympathy, fellow feeling, empathy, tenderness, brotherly love, consideration, kind-heartedness, benevolence. So all these words, again, give us the sense that it's an energy that we're able to share with others, that we're able to use when the situation demands it. So what I'd like to do now is just take you through a short exercise, excuse me, where we're going to imagine ourselves in front of someone who's suffering and just see what that feels like. So I invite you to join me in a kind of a thought experiment, if that's okay. So again, what I'd ask you to do is just sitting comfortably, dropping your shoulders, taking a few deep breaths. It might be easier for this, you can have your eyes closed or half open. What I'd like you to do is just imagine a time or remember a time when someone you loved or a dear friend was suffering in some way. They may have had a misfortune or failed, felt inadequate, they might have been sick or something bad has happened to them. And you're just sitting with this friend. Or loved one. What I'd like you to notice is As you're there and you're with them, how are you feeling? Maybe you're doing something. What are your actions? Maybe you're saying something. What kind of words are you using? And what's your tone of voice? How are you responding to your friend or your loved one? So what's your body posture, your actions, your words, your tone of voice, and how are you feeling? Now maybe just put that image and experience aside. And I'd like you to now imagine a time when you're suffering in some way. You may have had a misfortune, made a mistake, felt you failed. There's some challenge in your life which is causing you some pain or hurt. How are you responding to yourself? How do you talk to yourself? What's your tone of voice? What sort of actions do you take? How are you feeling? So again, something has happened to you. So you're feeling that you're in pain or you're hurting. How are you responding to yourself? What's your tone of voice? What kind of words do you use? What sort of actions? And how are you feeling? Now again, just opening your eyes, taking a few deep breaths, bringing yourself back to the present moment, being kind to yourself if something came up, was upsetting. What I'd like you to do is just compare those two. So you were with someone else who was suffering in some way, And then you were with yourself when you were suffering in some way. And I'm just going to stop sharing for a minute to give you a chance, if you'd like to write anything in the chat or something about your observation of what those two situations were like. So when I'm with someone else who's going through a tough time or is suffering in some way, and when I myself am going through a tough time or suffering in some way. So if anyone wants to write something in the chat, I think it'll get sent through to me. So I'll just give you a minute to give some feedback on that. I hope this system works. For some reason, it doesn't look like I'm getting anything in the chat. So I don't know if someone wants to send me a test message just to see if it's working. Okay. So someone's telling me that the experiences were quite similar. So did anyone notice if they were different? So I think sometimes with these situations, so someone's saying, see someone who's really caring for me, so seeing myself through the eyes of someone else. But I'm asking how you did respond to yourself. Okay. They have done quite a lot of research on this, and it's actually very common for people to notice that they are able to be kinder to others than they are to themselves. And in fact, about 78% of people, or even 80% of people, do notice this difference, that we can see when someone else is suffering and be very kind and nice to them. But in fact, when I am suffering, I'm often not so kind to myself. And there would be lots and lots of reasons for that. So there is this feeling, you know, when someone else is going through a rough time, we can feel our hearts being moved, and that we can say, oh, you know, don't worry, it's okay, and give lots of good advice, and, you know, be present and caring for someone else. So we know we have that capacity. We know that we have an energy within us that can respond to suffering. But often when it comes to our own suffering, because of the voices from our childhood or the culture we're in, we can often say to ourselves, oh, you know, don't be so pathetic, or, you know, come on, pull yourself together, you know, oh, I'm useless, you know, I'm stupid. So there is this tendency often to put ourselves down, and the research backs this up. So we've got, you know, about 80% of people do notice this difference, that actually when it comes to it, I have this ability to be kind to others, but when it comes to me, I'm not so kind to myself. About 18% say that they do treat themselves as kindly as they do other people. And about 2% say that they actually are kinder to themselves than others. So that's an unusual response, but some people do have it. So it's very common, and often we have this word, we say that we have Velcro for negativity and Teflon for positivity. Somehow we're kind of hyper alert in our environment to threats and things like that. So this is why we tend to pick up more negativity for ourselves than positivity. And we have to make a conscious effort really to start seeing the good in myself, but also learning how to really give myself that same energy. So we know that feeling, that emotion, that quality of compassion can be expressed. And so it's in us, but learning how to use it for myself when I need it. So really thinking now about self-compassion. And the Dalai Lama made this lovely quote in 2012, that to really feel compassion for others in a deep way, we have to have a basis for that compassion. And that is also the ability to connect with our own feelings and to care for our own welfare. That there's a very deep connection between compassion for myself and compassion for others. And often you can see, even with caregivers, with healthcare professionals, they're very, very good at looking after other people, but not so good at looking after themselves. That's a common finding as well. And thinking, why are we in these caring professions maybe in the first place? Sometimes it's because helping others is a way of us really feeling that our self-worth is built on that, or we're trying to please people. There are maybe other things that are driving our behavior rather than genuine care for ourselves. And it's interesting to note that, burnout rates and other health issues are quite high in people in the caring professions. So this ability, this skill, this understanding of how to look after myself is a very important one. And Kristen Neff is someone, and a psychologist from America. Kristen Neff and Christopher Germer have developed this mindful self-compassion course, and it's 3 hours a week for 8 weeks. It's quite a deep dive into self-compassion, and you learn a lot about where you are kind and unkind to yourself. And her compassion definition, self-compassion definition, it's really treating yourself with the same kindness and care that you would a good friend. So it involves responding in the same supportive and understanding way you would with a good friend when you have a difficult time, fail, or notice something you don't like about yourself. So it's really that feeling of being your own best friend, befriending yourself. And we'll go into that in more depth now. She talks about what are the 3 main components of self-compassion. So mindfulness. And when we say mindfulness, we're talking really about all kinds of meditation. It's that balanced awareness, that ability to really turn within and have a sense of what's going on inside myself, inside my body, inside my mind, to be able to just step back a little bit, have that sense of spacious awareness. So I'm able to notice. So this is linking with that first step of compassion, attending. So with meditation, with mindfulness, we are attending to our own inner world, our own inner landscape, and noticing first off that I actually am suffering. And there's a very nice little saying here, you've got to feel it to heal it. So if I'm not even aware of what's going on inside me, it's quite hard to then direct these feelings of kindness and compassion to it. So it requires a certain amount of self-examination. The second component is this one called common humanity. And this is really very important, because often when we're in pain or we're suffering or we're hurt, we have this feeling that we're alone. We tend to isolate, withdraw, feel that I'm uniquely cursed or blighted, that it's not happening to anyone else. But in fact, we all suffer. It's an absolute condition of the human race. Everyone from time to time in their lives will go through some challenges, loss, grief, death, illness, all kinds of things that happen to us. And so rather than thinking, oh, I'm all alone, it's really turning that around and going, well, actually, this is connecting me to the rest of humanity. This is what everyone goes through in their life from time to time. And then this respondness of self-kindness. And that really is a skill, it's an art, it's a way of using that energy of compassion, but actually using it actively for myself. And there are lots of self-kindness practices and meditation. In meditation itself, you're really learning how to connect to your own deep well of love within, and really love. Compassion is really love expressed in a way. So there's a deep connection between my own inequalities and this ability to use them as a resource, as a strength, as a power that I have within me. And when we talk about empowering ourselves, these are the qualities, these are the kind of things we can use. And why these three things are important, because they're kind of antidotes to the way we often normally respond to situations where there's something that's upsetting us or some challenge in our life. So mindfulness, this spacious awareness, as compared to over-identification. And often when something happens, or if we have a trouble in a relationship, we notice that our minds are going round and round, that we're overthinking, that we're really connecting to our thoughts and feelings in a very strong way. And the ability to just step back a bit, be an observer, really know that even though I'm generating these thoughts and feelings, they're not me. They're something I'm creating. A bit like a painter. You know, a painter knows that the paint that they're putting on the canvas isn't them, it's their creation. And so our thoughts and feelings are a bit like that. They're coming out of us, we're creating them, but we over-identify with them. And then that over-identification can take us into a downward spiral. Common humanity versus isolation, which I've just spoken about. So we're really not alone in our suffering, but it often makes us feel as if we are. And this self-kindness. So self-kindness instead of self-judgment or self-criticism. And it's very interesting that self-criticism will have the same effect on us as an external threat. And they've done brain scans which show that the same part of the brain that lights up if I was, perceiving an external threat, like something is coming that's going to hurt me, it's the same part of the brain that lights up when I am criticizing myself. And so we're literally threatening ourselves when we talk to ourselves in this way, and it has the same physiological effect. So the way we talk to ourselves is very important. And I'd like to try and unpack this a little bit more for you in the sense of our emotional regulation systems. And I think this is quite interesting to understand the physiology of how we're thinking, how that affects what's going on in terms of our emotions, and then the effect it has on our bodies. So you're very familiar, I'm sure, with this adrenaline, the threat focused system. And that's the thing that is often called flight, fight, or freeze. And so when we are feeling threatened, our brain responds by telling us you have to run away from that situation. You have to stay really still and not move and freeze. And so it's protecting, safety seeking. So it's activating, run away, or it's, defend yourself, or it's inhibiting, like just stay really still and don't move. So nothing's going to hurt you. And the kind of feelings that come out of that state of mind of fear, anger, anxiety, disgust. So this system has a use. It's important, obviously, because it's making us get out of the way of danger, or it's helping us defend ourselves if we need to. But I think we can see that in today's world, we're often spending possibly a bit too much time in this circle, but it does have its use. The next one, the dopamine one, is really very interesting as well. This is possibly being really overactivated today in sense of how we're very busy doing things. We get a reward, we get a sense of like what we call a dopamine hit when we complete a task. But also dopamine is very addictive. It's the chemical associated with gambling. And so they've noticed that a lot of the reaction to social media, to being compelled almost to check our smartphones every few seconds to see have we got a message, that's positive intermittent reinforcement. And we're getting a little dopamine hit every time we get a message, so we go back and check it again, that we've sort of become addicted to the dopamine in our brains. And even in the Silicon Valley, now they talk about having a dopamine fast. And I think some of you may have, even tried that, gone away for a weekend and just turned off all devices, really get yourself away from this almost a hamster response to checking things all the time. But it might not be your device, it just might be all the things in your life that you have to do, and you can't really relax until you feel you've achieved this, and this. And so you're on the go all the time. And so you do achieve things, but at what cost? And then we're looking at this other system. Now, this oxytocin system is the one, it's sometimes called the love hormone. It's the one that connects mothers and babies. It's bonding, it's connecting, soothing, feeling safe, feeling comfortable, connected. So we're really trying to increase this system because somehow the way we live today, often we're quite out of balance. And just to think for yourself, really how much time in your life are you spending feeling just a bit anxious, a bit uncomfortable, worrying about things? How much are you really on the go? You've got to get this done, this done, this done. And how much are you spending just really feeling relaxed, feeling safe, feeling connected, able to just have downtime, creative time, all those kind of things. And I think that's just something you can do a self-audit and notice for yourself. But I think in today's society, this balance sometimes looks a bit like this, that we're feeling under threat. And obviously there are big threats in the world today with climate change, COVID, etc. Understandable that we're all feeling quite under threat. Distract ourselves a lot, getting busy, doing things, getting things done. But then this feeling safe, when does that happen? Is it just only at the end of the day, when finally I sit down and, feel I can relax? And so the effect of this system out of balance, really. So another way of looking at this is this fight-threat response. When we turn that inwards, we get the self-criticism, which I say is like threatening ourselves. So the antidote for that is self-kindness. The flight system, when we turn that inwards, it feels like I'm alone, I'm isolated, no one else is going through the same thing. So the antidote for that is this feeling of connecting, of common humanity. And freezing, when I turn that inside, it's this feeling of rumination. My thoughts are going round and round. I can't stop thinking, he said, she said, that happened, this happened, why did I do that, blah, blah, blah. So I'm going round and round and round. And so the antidote to that is really creating this space, this spacious awareness, this mindfulness, this practice of meditation, which enables me just to create a little bit of room in my mind to access some deeper resources that I have. And all these ways of thinking, these neurotransmitter pathways are having an effect on my body. This is quite a busy slide, but it's just to show you really that when I'm in a stress reaction, so that's kind of on autopilot, and I'm in this fight, flight, or freeze, I'm generating a lot of adrenaline, I'm using my sympathetic system, and this is causing a lot of these stress hormones to be going around in my body that causes acute hyperarousal. So my heart rate is a bit high, my blood pressure's up, my inflammatory markers are up. So this turns then into a chronic stress reaction, which is causing lots of different kind of illnesses, which we're aware of, you know, these stress illnesses, irritable bowel, insomnia, anxiety, depression, depressed immune function. So these hormones circulating in my body do have an effect, and ultimately I get into maladaptive coping. So what we're trying to do is really bring it back to this sense of responding, not reacting, but responding, by using this compassionate and mindful response. So instead, when I'm stressed, getting all hyped up and those kind of hormonal and neurotransmitter responses, learning to actively soothe myself, learning to actively calm myself down. And then this is activating the parasympathetic nervous system. And with that, it's increasing endorphins, it's reducing the cortisol. And so I'm more open, receptive, and curious. My heart rate's going down, my inflammatory markers are going down, that I have less anxiety, and so more well-being. So there really is quite a direct connection between what kind of emotional regulation system or neurotransmitter system, nervous system pathway I'm activating. Another way of looking at this, which is quite nice, and it shows you how much things are in your hands. Happiness chemicals. Okay, so people are used to taking a pill, you know, go and get your antidepressant, and sometimes that's necessary if you're really in a bad way. But before you even get to that stage, how can you activate your own serotonin? So meditating, running, exercising, walking in nature, cycling, swimming, these things will boost your serotonin. Your endorphin, laughing, real laughter, it raises your pain threshold considerably. They've done lots of studies on this and experiments showing that if people have been shown a whole lot of comedians or jokes or things like that, that their pain threshold goes up. So it is increasing your endorphins. Eating dark chocolate, I was very happy to read that one. Dopamine, as I said, completing a task, but not to get too focused in action, celebrating little wins, things like that. And now oxytocin, playing with a dog, a baby, holding hands, hugging, big one that we've missed in COVID, complimenting, appreciating each other, things like that. So there are natural ways that we can increase the kind of transmitters, neurotransmitters, which are helping us to feel happier and more fulfilled. And another aspect of self-compassion, which is worth mentioning, I think, is this idea of yin and yang. So sometimes people say, oh, isn't self-compassion a bit wishy-washy? You know, are you feeling sorry for yourself, or are you being self-indulgent, that kind of thing. And there is this component to self-compassion, which is soothing and comforting and validating. That's true. But there's also another side, which we call the yang of self-compassion, where you do need to protect yourself or motivate yourself or look after yourself. And that's a much more active energy. We might call that Shakti, or this yang energy. So it's very important to realize that compassion wants what's best for you. And that may be discipline. You know, it's not just sitting on the couch eating all that dark chocolate. Yes, I'm going to get up and go for a run or a walk or do something, because compassion wants what's best for you in the long run. And it may be setting a boundary. It may be saying, no, I'm not going to take on this extra task, or no, you're not going to treat me like that. So these are all aspects of compassion as well. The research shows that, in fact, people who really embrace and practice self-compassion actually are more disciplined, have healthier habits. In the long run, they're more motivated, things like that. So it doesn't have the effect of just turning you into a fluffy kind of walkover. And the other thing which I think is really important to understand is really that self-compassion is a reflection of our true nature. And on a deeper level, I feel, you know, I've done lots of work with people with dementia. That was my work as a psychiatrist, and done brain scans, looked at neurotransmitter pathways, all this kind of thing. And what I can say is that even though we understand all these neurotransmitters are modulating other pathways for things to be expressed, there's been nothing in neuroscience which has told me what is the, wherever we're having an experience, who is the experiencer? Who is witnessing? Who is observing? Who's the experiencer of the thoughts? And for me, I understand this to be our spiritual selves, our souls, if you like. And the true nature of that soul is one of love and peace and happiness. And so when we're expressing compassion, we're expressing something from deep within ourselves, from deep within our souls, that I am peace, I am love. And when that love meets suffering, whether it's outside or whether it's within myself, that becomes the energy of compassion. And we say that compassion, that we should give and express and show compassion because it's the right thing. We're not doing it because we want something to go away necessarily or to fix things quickly, but it's a true response. It's reflecting our own inner truth, and therefore it's the right way to respond to suffering. So I think these deeper aspects are also really important to reflect on and give us an understanding of where this energy of compassion is coming from. And for for others, there's still yet another dimension where in meditation, in mindfulness, in contemplation, that we can connect to another energy which we might call the ocean of compassion. And so there are deeper layers of this which allow us to experience compassion in a very deep way. So what I'd like to do now in the last kind of talk aspect of today, before we go on to question and answers, is take you through another exercise where we're going to really practice. It's a short practice, but you can do it quickly in your everyday life. And this is something that I think is really important because often, we might be feeling stressed or something's challenging us, and it's only afterwards or when we get ourselves out of the situation that we're able to do something about it, have a hot bath or go on holiday or have that, something relaxing at the end of the day. But is there something we can be doing at the time? And this is really helpful, this little practice. So it starts by understanding what are the universal triggers of compassion. And in some ways, to understand that this is two-way traffic between my mind and my body. So my body can give my mind signals and my mind can give my body signals. This two-way traffic is going on all the time. And so what are the signals from my body? Now, when you had that person in front of you who was suffering, what did you do? I bet a lot of you gave them a hug, or you held their hand, or you gave, stroked them. There, it's okay. Very, very common response. And so soothing touch is a very grounding practice which will trigger that feeling of compassion. So we're going to use that in this exercise to help soothe ourselves. I'm sure when you were with someone who was suffering, your voice was gentle, your vocalization tone was one of the supportive, loving attitude. You weren't yelling at the person, oh, I feel so sorry for you. You'd be going, there, it's okay, So that tone of voice, again, is very important. And often our own internal dialogue, we need to notice what's the tone of voice that I'm speaking to myself in. Physical warmth, a hot water bottle, a cup of tea. How often do we give people a hot drink? Let's have a coffee. That's actually invoking this response as well. And a smile, just a smile, that look on our face, the expression that we share with others when we can see they're in pain, that has a big effect. Just walking past someone on the street and you notice they're looking down and you give them a smile will lift their spirits. So we're going to use this fact of soothing touch to help trigger our own self-compassion response when we notice we're suffering. And that will be this little exercise. And you probably already have something that you do. I noticed, wasn't aware of it, it was very subconscious, unconscious, that if I was in a meeting and I was feeling anxious, I'd often just be rubbing my thumbs like this. And in fact, I was soothing myself. And so it might be quite a discreet little thing that you do, stroking your hand, holding your hand, that just gives you this feeling of support. So what I'd like to do now is invite you just to do this short exercise to experience what soothing touch and a self-compassion break feels like. So again, I'd invite you to sit comfortably, close your eyes, drop your shoulders, take a few deep breaths. And just start by having your hands in your lap. And begin by holding your own hand. Just stroking your hand. Just notice which of these actions feels comfortable for you. Holding your hand, stroking your hand. Maybe stroking your arms. Just giving yourself a little stroke. And maybe a little hug. Giving yourself a little hug. And one action that a lot of people find very helpful, just putting one hand over your heart. And with the intention that you're feeling, I'm sending that loving, supportive, kind energy to myself. So it's coming from my hand into my heart, and even maybe putting the other hand over the top of it so it's double dose. You know, really just giving that energy of love to myself. And sometimes just holding your own belly, having your hands in your lap and holding your belly, that feeling of holding yourself together, giving yourself support. And then once again, holding your own hand, but holding your own hand with that energy of I'm here for you. I'm supporting you. And just noticing which one of those was your favorite for today, and then just putting your hands back in your lap. And now I'd like you to think of a situation in your life at the moment, which is a bit challenging or difficult, something that's causing you stress. It might be a health problem or a relationship problem, a work problem, or maybe even a friend who's struggling. If you feel your life is quite smooth right now, is there someone else who's struggling who you're trying to support? And please just choose a problem in the mild to moderate range. We don't want to stress you out too much today, just while we're practicing this. So just something that when you think about it, your body feels a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit tense. And then just saying to yourself, slowly and quietly, this is a moment of suffering. And just finding your own words for this. It might be, oh, I don't feel so good, or I feel a bit anxious, I'm feeling uncomfortable. This hurts. Ouch. This is painful. This is acknowledging, this is validating the feeling, just accepting it, not judging it. This is a moment of suffering. And it could be anything. It could be someone speaking to you in a harsh and unkind way, or your car's broken down. These are all little moments of pain. And I'm saying to myself now that suffering is part of living. And this is our common humanity. So even though these challenges and things happen in my life, I'm not alone. We all suffer from time to time, and this is what it feels like when a person struggles in this way. And this feeling is actually connecting me with millions of other human beings on this planet. And now I'd like you to think back to what's the soothing touch that you like the most for you just now. And it might be putting your hand on your heart, but putting your hand wherever feels soothing for you, and saying to yourself, may I be kind to myself. May I give myself the love that I need. May I be a friend to myself. And feeling that warmth and energy, that support coming from my hands to myself. And sometimes if the words aren't coming easily, if I could imagine that a dear friend or a loved one was going through the same thing as me, what might I say to them? What would I say to this person heart to heart? And can I give those same words of wisdom to myself? And so this is a moment of suffering. I'm not alone. We all suffer from time to time. May I give myself the kindness that I need right now. And this self-compassion break is a really useful practice. You can do it. I practice it with my husband. If I notice we're starting to get into an argument, I realize that we're about to go off down a certain track. Something's come up. He's gone a bit irritated with me, and I'm inclined to respond and react. And I've really learned now, just very quietly to myself, I just go, it's a moment of suffering. Give myself kindness. And the energy of the interaction changes. and it de-escalates rather than escalates. So these are things, this is a practice that you can actually do very quickly. Just, it becomes a habit to remember to do that when you notice that you're feeling anxious, uncomfortable, stressed, to do that first, not last, not later on, but actually in the moment. So those were the things that I wanted to share with you today, and I have some resources, but I think we'll share them at the end, because now it's an opportunity for you to ask questions and for us to have a discussion if you'd like that.
Sarah, what a beautiful talk. I'm so appreciating it and still absorbing it. I felt so engaged, actually, so insightful, so much information, and I love the way you delivered it. It was just so caring. Your tone of voice, all of those things, so much care and compassion in it. Lots of learning points. I loved the that expression you gave us, compassion wants what's best for me. Just love that one. And the other one about may I give myself a compassion break. So many things to really appreciate there, and I'm looking forward to listening to it again. So thank you. And yes, there's some questions coming in. Are you okay to respond to some of them?
Yeah. Do you ask them, or should I read them myself?
You probably can't see them. They're here.
Okay, so you
So,
ask them.
yeah. So let me have a look here. How did you develop compassion, or were you always compassionate?
I mean, I think I found that doing the mindful self-compassion course really attuned me to how much resource, how deep the resource of compassion was within us. I think my practice of meditation for many years had certainly made me aware that I was a being of love, and that love was a resource that obviously we share with each other. It's that energy of connection, and that I could give it to myself, and that I could connect to a source of love. They were very powerful practices for me. But I think this ability to really be much more aware of when I was suffering has really been helped by specifically tuning into these self-compassion practices and becoming more aware of where I was actually beating myself up. I think we have very deep habits of doing that. And we're not even aware of even our sub-vocalizations, the voices from our childhood that might be telling us that we're no good, or we're not good enough, or things like that. These automatic negative thoughts or negative beliefs about ourselves. So I would say I did have compassion. I was compassionate. I went into healthcare profession because I wanted to help people, look after people. But it is something, it's like a muscle that has been strengthened over the years through all these different inputs. And so it's made me realize that we all have it within us, but we can strengthen it. We can bring it out. We can exercise that compassion muscle. And that by doing that, we increase its visibility, if you like, or we make it more active and a strength in our lives.
Getting a few messages coming in here, so just managing that. Thank you for that. Another one here is, what have been the most significant things that you've learnt over the last year in terms of compassion within the context of the global pandemic?
I think what we've talked about today, because in a sense it's responding to any kind of threat, internal or external, realizing that you have a lot of resources within you that are in your control. And in fact, something I can share at the end, in the first lockdown here in England, a colleague and myself decided there was a book that we'd been thinking about that we wanted to write, and it gave us the space and definitely the context to write it, and it's called Stillness in the Storm. And it is, so that act of writing a book has really made me think about, well, what's useful for me and for others in these contexts. And so there's 7 tools for dealing with fear and uncertainty. And I think fear is the big thing, you know, fear is the mind killer. Came from a novel many years ago, but this sense of noticing where fear is present in me and then learning how to respond to that fear in a way that's healthy, that's constructive. So obviously there were threats, there is a threat, you know, you need to take the right precautions to look after yourself, but how the fear can stay lingering in your mind, and it has these ongoing effects. So writing the book, the chapters or the sections, the tools, finding my safe space inside, stepping back and accepting, loving myself, empowering myself, connecting, and finding that peaceful place within, really going on that spiritual journey inside, and knowing that when everything outside of me is chaotic and people are frightened and scared, that there is a place inside of me where I can find that feeling of safety. So to strengthen those powers, to strengthen those habits, to be able to be still in the storm was something that became a real theme for me through writing the book. But all those skills, I think, were things that I could see were very useful, especially in times of COVID. And obviously in Australia you had a long lockdown in Victoria, and but we're still in lockdown here in UK, and I think, you know, there's so people have had a lot of time and opportunities to become creative, to learn how to connect in other ways, to look after themselves, you know, keeping up exercise, all those kind of things. So it's been a lot around self-care, the whole experience.
Yeah, yeah. Just on that, you were mentioning some resources there. Can you tell us a bit about them? Because I imagine that for some people listening to this, there might be some takeaways that they may need to take with them in terms of continuing this process of self-compassion and being able to. Oh, great! They're coming up now. We can see them on the screen. I think everyone would.
Yeah. So it's probably easier for me to describe them just using the last few slides. So yeah, this is the book that we wrote, Stillness in the Storm, and it's also got it's an ebook available from the Janki Foundation, and it's got audio tracks as well. So there are meditations that are attached to this book, which are either embedded in the ebook, or you can get them from the website if you get the paperback copy. But we've used positive psychology, therapeutic and spiritual models and approaches to help really get this feeling of stillness, of safety when things around us are uncertain and fearful. So these were the tools: creating inner safety, being present, loving myself, stepping back and accepting, empowering myself. And empowering myself, there are subcategories of things that we can do that really help lift our moods or help us let go of the past. So practices such as forgiveness, as gratitude, things like that. Connecting, and then there's discovering inner peace and wholeness, so the deeper spiritual aspects of our identity. And then resilience beyond the storm. So how do we keep this up, this sense of really caring deeply for myself, even when the storm has passed. We also, at the Janki Foundation, have produced a free app called Happy Dote, which if you go onto the Play Store, you should find quite easily. And these are 10 sort of stressful scenarios. They were written specifically for healthcare professionals, health and social care professionals, and caregivers. But I think a lot of people will find them really, really helpful. So they're little 3-minute meditations, which are antidotes to stressful situations, and some core meditations. and something called a value scope. You spin it and you'll get a value for the day. So this is a free meditation app, which you might find really helpful. Again, it was meant to be something you can use in the moment, on the job, just, 3 minutes, very short meditation. And the self-compassion resources, of course, there are very many, but there is the Center for Mindful Self-Compassion in USA. That's the website for that. There are courses in the UK. I'm sure there are courses in Australia as well, and the American site has all the courses worldwide. I've done sound recordings of a lot of self-compassion meditations, which are available free on SoundCloud. And Kristen Neff and Christopher Gurma have their own websites. And I'm sure through Brahma Kumaris Australia, there are lots of meditation centers. So any practice of meditation is going to help you to strengthen these skills and awareness of compassion and self-compassion. And that practice of meditation and mindfulness, just to help you create more of a sense of spaciousness inside and being able to go in and really find those inner resources. They're the main resources, aren't they, really, Gabrielle? We know the ones that we all have, that we're often unaware, that we can feel when someone else is suffering. It's very easy, and that sort of that impetus to be altruistic, that feeling that we want to help others. But it never occurred to us that actually I can use that same energy for myself. And of course, it's lovely when we're suffering if there are others around who can help support us and help us through a difficult time. But sometimes people aren't available, or they're not able to respond in the way we want them to. And so to really be able to use my own resources to the maximum means that I'm not so reliant on what's going to come or not come from outside. So they're good things to remember.
So those resources, they're available from the Janki Foundation website. Is that right, Sarah?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay. Love to get that book, and I'm sure others would as well. I don't think, viewers, that it's yet available in Eternity Inc. here in Australia, but of course you can get it online via the Janki Foundation. And just viewers, just wanting to mention that if there's anything that you need more urgently, we've got Lifeline here at 131114 and Beyond Blue, which is 1300224636. So if if you're needing to reach out, those resources are available here in Australia. And as Sarah mentioned too, there's a lot of other resources in terms of learning how to meditate here in Australia. But I love that book, Sarah. I'm looking forward to getting a copy of it and enjoying reading it and practicing it. There's a couple of other questions that we've got time for, and I'd just like to pitch them to you. One is, what's the connection and difference between emotional intelligence and self-compassion?
Well, I think self-compassion is part of emotional intelligence, but emotional intelligence is really realizing again that my emotions are, I think, as I said, coming from me. Their internal responses. It's sort of like energy in motion. So we have our thinking capacity, where we're aware of thoughts, and we have a feeling capacity. And often our feelings are telling us a lot, but we're not very good at reading them. And so I think compassion, so the ability to understand more clearly what I'm feeling is an important skill, and often therapy might be directed towards something like that. If you're really struggling, obviously it's a good idea to get professional help and have a therapist. But one of the self-compassion exercises, which I think is really interesting, it's managing difficult emotions, and so in a way, compassion is in your toolbox. It's like a skill that can increase your emotional intelligence. So we start off by looking at what we often get, what might be called a hard feeling, so a reaction. So we're thinking, we're getting angry, we're getting irritated, we're getting frustrated. and we're noticing and observing that this is coming up in me. And it's a process of then being able to perhaps just step back a little bit and think about, well, what's the soft feeling underneath that? So often when we're reacting in some way, underneath it is a softer feeling, and that softer feeling might be, feeling rejected, or not being heard, or um, some kind of sense of not belonging, or but some kind of softer feeling. So it comes out hard. There's a softer feeling underneath. And then under the softer feeling, we're looking at what's the unmet need. And again, at the bottom of any kind of strong emotional reaction, there might be the sense that I'm not being seen, I'm not being heard, I'm not being loved. And that's at the bottom of most things, is this need we have to feel loved and connected. And then when I notice what is my unmet need, in a sense, what I'm reacting because there's a need in me that it's not being felt, then to learn to notice that, and then to give myself the kindness, to give myself the love, to give myself the compassion, so that you're meeting your own unmet needs. And I think when you get better at that, you realize that you have a lot of other resources inside that are kind of antidotes to sometimes this reaction. And so we learn that spiritually we are peaceful beings. So there's a whole energy of peace within me that I can access. There is the energy of love I can access. There's the energy of happiness. And it becomes more of a habit, rather than looking outside and thinking, well, how can you respond to my need? I start to use my own internal toolbox. And as I said in the talk too, that feeling that there is also a higher energy, an energy of compassion, of love, of strength that I can connect into. And that's what we mean by Raja Yoga. It's a higher connection. So there's so many resources that perhaps I'm not aware of, but when I get used to making that connection either with my own deeper nature or with a higher nature, a higher energy, that I'm able to use, instead of somehow expecting the outside world and my relationships to be fulfilling me. So I think for me, that's how emotional intelligence and compassion connect.
I can see that. There's a lovely connection there, really. There's just another question that I'd like to ask that's come in, and it says, how can I be less controlling and start trusting and aligning myself with whatever is unfolding?
Really good question.
Great question, isn't it?
Really good question. Yeah, because I think what I'm seeing today is that trust is something that people find really quite hard to feel for in lots of situations. Not trusting other people, not trusting themselves, not trusting that the world is somehow on their side. So I think trust is a huge topic, and when we and that controlling behaviors that I think are a response to anxiety, in a way, a feeling that things aren't right, or I want to try and keep things right. So we try and make things go a certain way because we're feeling anxious. And this controlling kind of behavior, it's not good for us, and it's certainly not good for other people around us. It does ruin relationships because people just, they don't like being treated like that. And for me, it's not easy, because I think we've got very used to having to protect ourselves, and this lack of trust and this controlling is a form of protection. And so it's almost like you have to trust. What can you trust, in a sense? So I think these compassion practices help you learn to trust yourself more. And I think that's a very deep thing. So when you trust yourself more, you can let go. You can let go a bit and just think, yeah, I mean, you have more a sense of your own wisdom, and that what you're doing in a situation is the right thing for you. And what we might say is trusting trusting the universe in a way that things are unfolding and in a way that they should, and that it's a benign universe, not a malevolent universe. And if you have that feeling and feeling that everyone around you has their own part to play in the world, and that they have a right to do that in whatever way they feel is, as long as they're not harming others as they can, that it's really not your place to be deciding what someone else is doing or not doing, and just creating this easiness with inside to help others be as they are, accept them as they are. So acceptance, I think, is a big underlying quality that is needed here. And you know what it feels like when someone accepts you as you are. They may know your flaws, but they can see the goodness in you. So seeing the goodness in others, it's a bit this sort of glass half empty, half glass full kind of vision. So when I'm able to see the goodness in others, see the goodness in a situation, the silver lining, if you like, that's going to help me trust more, and it's going to help me let go and just allow things to unfold. But I think it's an art. It's something that it's an attitude that we kind of have to practice almost and remind ourselves to do.
It was lovely. Thank you for that response. We're just about ready to close out now. There's a few things coming in, but just have a quick look at this chat box here. A lot of thanks coming in. Thank you for your knowledge and your presentation, Sarah. So a lot of appreciation coming through, Sarah, for what you've shared with us tonight. And I very much appreciated your wisdom and the very loving way that you shared it with us. It's just so gentle and so deep, and a gorgeous combination. And I'm also thinking too of really wanting to thank you for the enormous contribution that you've given to humanity in your role as a psychiatrist, and also as a yogini. That combination is so strong and so powerful, and yet so gentle and compassionate. And I'm sure that you've made a huge contribution in the UK, but globally as well. And I know that you've been very involved around the world in terms of health and well-being, mental health and well-being. And so a deep thank you for that contribution that you've made. And on behalf of the viewers, our thanks, our love, and our blessings to you for your very gorgeous healing compassion.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. I love it. I love this expression. It was one of my favourites. So thanks very much, Sarah. And we look forward to being able to engage with you again some other time. We're looking forward to getting a copy of your book. And we're hoping Eternity Inc. will be able to stock that for us as well. So
yeah, well, it's an ebook, so you should be able to get the ebook now too.
Oh, good. Oh, thank you. So we'll put that in a mail out to everyone as well about how they can get hold of it. And someone's asked for, access to your slides. If you're willing to share that, we can share those as well. Some of the key points there. But viewers, thank you very much for your questions. They were thought-provoking. And as you know, our Eternity Inc. bookshop has some excellent books and meditation commentaries on compassion. And it also has a full range of online books on self-empowerment and spirituality. And they're always at not-for-profit prices, so it makes it really very accessible to you. If you'd like to subscribe to Open Your Eyes to the Universe and receive our monthly updates, please email us at specialevents@au.brahmakumaris.org. And finally, I'd like to tell you about our next episode of Open Your Eyes to the Universe. It's with Antonella Ferrari, and she'll join Youniverse next month on Saturday evening, the 27th of March. And her topic is the language of love. And she asks us the question, which language do you speak? So Antonella maintains that if there is a part of the self that needs healing and growth, then it's the heart, the most vital inner sacred space. And in her conversation with us, she will explore its language and the 6 qualities that allow us to communicate from the heart. Antonella was born in Tuscany, Italy, and she's now living in Bologna, so she's going to share with us from Italy. She's been practicing and teaching Raj Yoga meditation for many years. So she'll be with us on Saturday, the 27th of March at 6 p.m. That's AEDT. Now, I need to let you know that I'm going to be in New Zealand at this time, visiting family and my lovely elderly mother. Actually, I'll be in hotel quarantine there, and I need to quarantine for 2 weeks before I'm allowed to visit my family, so I'll be doing that. And in my place, Carolyn Ward has kindly agreed to anchor for me for the next 2 episodes of Youniverse. I'll see you on my return, and Carolyn is looking forward to hosting Antonella on our next episode of Youniverse. That's Saturday, the 27th of March, 6 p.m, to engage in a conversation of the language of love. So until then, take care, and may your days be filled with self-compassion practices. Om Shanti.